What was the weirdest date you've ever been on? Story 1. Went to the Church of Scientology, roped in with promises of free food. We were on a date for Christmas. So odd. Edit, they had us take the personality test and tried to break us up. They said we were completely incompatible, to the point of being toxic. We've been together 10 years LOL. Story 2. When I was 15, a girl asked me to the movies. It was I love you, man. Her parents decided to attend too. Then one of the characters cursed like 10 minutes into the movie and the parents told us we were leaving. They took me right home and that was that. Story 3. Was going to go to a bar with a girl I met on Tinder. She showed up 15 minutes late, which wasn't that big of a deal. Got out of her car, crossed the street, and then awkwardly shook my hand. Told me she forgot her ID at home, apologized, and then left. Story 4. It's hard to say I was catfished cause the actual girl was there, but so was her boyfriend and her friend she thought I would be a better match with. What made it more odd is she had sent nudes, full face nudes, not photoshopped face swapped. I could see the chest tat on her in person, no mistaking that. Story 5. Another one, I went on a date with this girl from Tinder. She super liked me and messaged first, so I was really happy to have someone interested. I asked if she'd like to go for a walk sometime and she said she'd love to. So we get to walking and like 5 minutes in, she asks if I have roommates. I said yes, I live with 5 people and tell her about a few of them. There's Max, Matt, Mark. Wait, Mark Smith? I know him. What's he been up to? So we start chatting about my roommate and she knows a lot about him. His family, the sports he plays, his girlfriend. Every time I try to move the conversation somewhere else, she brings it back to Mark. She's not even pretending to be into me anymore, she's just fangirling out over my roommate. I just love him, his hair is always so shiny and he smells so nice. She spends the full 2 hours talking about him and asking all sorts of questions. I didn't really know what to do, so I just boredly keep answering. When we get back to our cars, she shifts gears again. Hey, so I had a really great time. Want to go back to your place to have some fun? She's really creeping me out at this point, so I tell her I have homework to do and maybe later. I get back and tell Mark about the date and he knows exactly who she is. He picks up his phone and immediately calls the police. They show up at the house, find the girl outside in the backyard, and arrest her for violating a restraining order or something. It turned out she was super unstable and had stalked my roommate since they went on one date almost a year prior. She recognized from photos she had of him and used me to find out where he lived. Story 6. I went on a date with a girl to a bar and grill. The girl just got set free from a bad relationship. The bartender was her uncle, the server was her sister, and her fresh ex-boyfriend was there on a date with another guy. Story 7. I do not miss that about small towns. Back in high school, me and the boys were getting food in the next town over, and one of my buddies thought it would be funny to order a fur burger with a side of thighs. I get to the window and the older lady didn't think that was funny at all, but that made us laugh even harder. Then very next night I go to pick up my date for the homecoming dance, and of course it's the fast food lady who answers the door. Story 8. Third date with a guy from Hinge. Started off completely normal, went to a pub for a few drinks. Pub closes. Guy invites me back to his. We get back to his and have a few more drinks. He then asks if I'd like to smoke a joint. Hadn't smoked for a few years, but thought, hey, it'll be fine. End up feeling very sick and unable to move. Guy doesn't have a bucket or bowl, so brings over the entire kitchen bin and places it next to me. He then suggests we watch a movie. Guy puts on American Psycho and I sit there for the next 2 hours paralyzed and paranoid, completely convinced he's going to murder me. Also, he lived on a boat. Story 9. Dated a man who corrected my Polish because his grandmother was Polish and she told him how to pronounce some words. Mind you, I was brought up in Poland, went to school and college there, read a zillion books, saw a zillion Polish movies, etc. But this guy was very condescending about my pronunciation of the few words he learned from his grandma. Story 10. The girl took me to a cemetery at night, walked me to a grave, explained that it was her cousin and that night was the anniversary of his death, then told me a long story about the time he adored her. If you made it this far, please consider pressing the subscribe and like button. Now continue to the video. Story 11. I matched with a Chinese exchange student on Tinder. She asked me to meet her at her apartment, then we'd go link up with some of her friends at the waterfront. We're texting as I'm on the way over, and she didn't realize this was a date. Nonetheless, she asks me to pick up dinner for both of us on the way over. I get to her apartment, and before I can even take my jacket off, she says, "So, do you have anything to say to me?" Presumably because I'd spent 15 seconds in silence. I offer her the food she asked for. She said she wasn't hungry. I try to strike up a conversation, but she dead ends every topic I bring up. She starts texting and making phone calls. She was speaking Mandarin, presumably, but I was able to make it the name of the place we were supposed to meet her friends. She said something about how plans might change because her friend needs help. Throughout all this, I just sat by myself, eating my sandwich in silence. When I was finished, I asked if she just wanted me to leave. She said yes, then gave me $20 for dinner. Story 12. So I was 18, in the Air Force, and living in the dorms. My roommate set me up with his girlfriend's cousin, and the four of us went to a movie. She brought a stuffed animal. Not a tiny little thing some young women clip to their keychain. It was a gigantic blue rabbit at least as big as a toddler. She said she brought it because she sometimes gets scared in movies. We were seeing a comedy. After the movie, we grabbed some ice cream and drove the cousins home. My date invited me to kiss her at the door, but told me I should also kiss Pebbles so he wouldn't be jealous. Edit, of course I kissed Pebbles. My date was actually out of my league hot. But crazy. Story 13. I was talking to dude on Tinder and decided to meet up with him for coffee one day. He only talked in impersonations of WWE wrestlers and then asked me to go to WrestleMania with him and his entire family later that night. Story 14. Boy, had that one happen to me in college. Asked girl A to come watch a horror movie in my dorm. She ends up bringing girl B along with her. I'm like whatever, still chilling with girls watching movies. Then it's kinda obvious girl A doesn't want to do anything and wants me to talk with girl B. But her friend, girl B, was pretty cool and attractive, so I was okay with it. So then girl A says, "Hey, you should go to this date night party with girl B." I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm down. End of night with girl B, we start making out and I try making moves and she's like, "Oh no, this is so wrong, girl A likes you." And I'm like, WTF. Turns out they both liked me. And no threesome ending to this story or anything. Never got to do anything with either one. Story 15. Not as dumb as what I did one time, so I was talking to this girl in the dorms. We went to the same HS, and she invited me back to her dorm to watch a TV show, so I said K. Later on she said she was tired and asked if I wanted to take a nap with her. To this day, I regret being the retard that said no thanks, I'm not sleepy. I sat on the edge of her bed playing Angry Birds while she napped. Story 16. I went on a 4-hour date with a woman who rides horses for a living. The entire 4 hours she told me everything I could possibly want to know about horses, and then some. I learned so much about horses that I done forgot most of the shit she told me. Edit, holy buck, the puns have me dying, lol. Story 17. I was interested in this girl, and she kind of tricked me into a double date where she was dating another guy and had fixed me up with her sister. Being a good sport, I went along with it and it was awkward but okayish. But then she set me up with her sister again, and this time it was just the two of us. We went to the park. She had filled the trunk of her car with troll dolls, I mean dozens and dozens of them, and spent the entire date introducing me to her trolls one by one. I should mention we were in our 20s. She was getting frustrated and angry because I didn't seem all that interested in her dolls. So sitting there, hands full of troll dolls, she exasperatedly asks me, "So are we going to have sex?" Do you even know how to have sex? Not with you, I don't. I said, and got up and walked home. There's only so much one can endure while being polite. Story 18. LMAO, this reminds me of a girl I saw briefly back in my late teens. I was 19 and she was 24. Mostly she came to my apartment where we fooled around at work. We worked together. First time I go to her place, as soon as I walk in there's just Care Bears clucking everywhere. I mean dozens of stuffed animals, posters, every single movie she owned, everything was Care Bears. The first thing I asked was, "Are you going to murder me?" Then she asked if I was hungry. Only thing she had was leftover pizza from the place we worked. I figured it was a good time for me to leave. She married a guy I know and eventually they got divorced. He complains to me about her all the time because she still breastfeeds their 4-year-old son, which is giving him digestive issues, and a doctor even appealed on his behalf that she's harming their children and should lose custody, but because of the state we in they still let her keep the kids. Also, he's been remarried for a couple years now, but she is still telling their kids that mommy and daddy are just fighting and he's going to come crawling back to her any day now. Story 19. My first dating app date. Starts off pretty good. We barely put in our dinner order and her phone starts blowing up. Her ex was drunk and causing a scene outside her apartment. Her ex kept calling, then her roommate started, and then the landlord calls threatening to call the police. We get our food to go and I take her back to her apartment. Long story short, both her and her ex are crying messes. She goes inside, leaves me outside with crying drunk ex who starts telling me all about how he messed their relationship. Dude is way too drunk to drive. I end up driving him to his app, Uber back to my car, realize my date took all the food with her. The joys of dating. Story 20. Dated a woman who didn't tell me she needed meds because she was psychotic. In the middle of dinner at a restaurant, she got quiet and distracted. I asked if she was feeling okay. Apparently one of the voices told her I was a horrible person and she pulled a steak knife on me. A customer was able to talk to her and got her to put the knife down. The police were called and she was arrested. I didn't press charges, and about a week later, she sent me a letter with proof that she's been in counseling for a long time, takes medication, and included a heartfelt apology. Story 21. Ugh, why do families do this? I went on an awkward teen date when I was 14 or 15 with a boy who lived maybe 40 minutes away, so our parents drove us to an ice cream place halfway between our towns, and instead of giving us 90 minutes to ourselves, stayed and got ice cream too and just sat at another table. I may be remembering wrong, but I think my brother was even there. No idea why, my parents usually weren't that overbearing. I did not continue to date the guy. Story 22. Went on a first date where someone asked me why I cut my hair so short. I guess I could have lied or blown off the question, but I don't like to start anything with falsehood, so I told him that I had chemo for breast cancer, that I'll probably be completely fine now, and we absolutely didn't have to talk about it. He asked me a few questions about the surgery, single mastectomy, and he said, "I want to know which one it is, but I can't look at your boobs now." I told him if he could guess which boob got the axe, I'd buy the drinks and appetizer. He won, and I never saw him again. I'm positive I am the weirdest date that guy has ever been on. Story 23. Went on a Tinder date who made it clear she had mental health issues and PTSD from past trauma. We decided to meet for bubble tea. I get a seat and wait. She walks in with a large stuffed shark. Cool. Plushies are fine. They can be a good therapeutic tool. She gets her beverage. We sit down to drink. Not even a hello was exchanged, and we dive right into how she was assaulted and her word. I was in the healthcare field. I can listen. The thing is though, she was talking very loudly. Uncomfortable levels of loudness about tough issues. I could not redirect her or change the topic. Nothing. She wasn't having any of that. So, I panicked and said, "Want to go to your car and make out?" Her eyes light up and she loosens the grip on her stuffed shark. Okay. We get back to her car. We kiss very awkward. It was mostly teeth. And the shark was kind of between us. I mentioned how I'm kink friendly to her previously. She hit me with a weird question in this awkward teethy kissing. Can we do some more wordplay? I kind of panicked again. You sure? I mean, maybe? We can walk to a park? I stammered. We get out of the car. We walk towards a park. The entire time she is talking about her trauma. All that jazz. Just awkward. We get to a fairly private space. She softly says, maybe we shouldn't do this? Yeah. Sounds good to me. I ended up jerking off while she watched me. I took an Uber home. I texted her that I had a good time. She ghosted me 100%. Story 24. This girl from Tinder invited me over to cuddle. So I assumed that we were totally going to bang. I get there, she cooked a lovely dinner, and we just kind of held each other and talked about our traumas for a while. I told her about stuff I don't even really talk about with my closest friends. Then we moved to her bed and she fell asleep like, fast, and we just sorta cuddled all night. We never even kissed, except those back of the neck ones that happen when you're spooning. I woke up, we cuddled a little more, and then I went to work. It was an awesome, super intimate experience. Pretty weird though. Story 25. I had one Tinder date invite me over to just hang out. Dipshit me didn't get the message that meant to bang. Anyway, I brought over Oreos, her request, and a treat for her dog, then left after we got to know each other a bit. We hung out that weekend and she said she was surprised I didn't make a move and said it made her think I was a good guy. We got a few drinks at a Rick and Morty bar crawl, went back to her place then banged. Anyway, where this is going is, early in the morning her dog took a massive diarrhea shit on my jeans next to her bed. I wrote it off as her farting in her sleep when I smelt it during the night until I woke up the next day and had to wear her tiny gym shorts home. We dated for a few months, pretty cool gal. Story 26. Told a girl I was into granola environmental shit. She replied me too, we hit it off quickly. Anyway. She kept talking up how incredible her job was and that she taught a bunch of kids about environmental issues and how amazing this job was. Basically begging me to come check it out. So we picked a day and I took the day off from work. It had been a while since we saw each other, so she decided it would be fun to send me real kinky texts about fun places we could sneak off to around her work as it was her fantasy. I was down, and I was getting in the mood myself. I drive to her work, only to find out she works at a trash-burning power plant and recycling center, and on that day will be giving a tour to a bunch of preschoolers. Throughout the date, basically every chance she could, she would try to get me turned on when no one was looking. There were about 20 kids and teachers right there. Meanwhile, we're walking through piles of rotten trash, or looking at machinery that could kill you in an instant if you stepped over a boundary line, or staring into a white-hot furnace to see the burning trash. The more you walked around, the dirtier you felt, which in a way was not surprising. I still had the worst blue balls in my life, which in itself was questionable. Anyway, the tour ended, she took me in her office, and well, let's just say it took 3 showers and a wave to a priest to feel clean after that. Story 27. Oh God. I've been on a few, but the one that really takes the cake is the time that a guy stole my keys. I was young and dumb. I started talking to this guy on a dating site. We agreed to meet up at a bar that was about a 5-minute walk from my house. First of all, the guy is late. Like over 30 minutes late, which almost makes me back out, but he keeps texting me updates that he's almost there. I give him the benefit of the doubt since he is driving a long distance to get here. Once he finally arrives, over an hour late, I immediately realize that I'm not as attracted to him as I thought I would be. Nothing I can put my finger on, there just isn't any chemistry between us. From the vibe he gave off, it seemed like the feeling was mutual. We still got along pretty well though, and he did drive all that way to see me, so I figured we could hang out for a bit before he went back home. The bar we went to didn't have anyone in there besides us, and after an hour or so the bartender decides to close early. Since I live such a short distance away, I invite the guy over to my place to smoke a bowl and chit-chat before he heads home. We stop at his truck to get something out of it before we walk to my place. We get to my place and smoke a bowl, watch a few YouTube videos, have a fun conversation. Then, out of left field, because he had shown zero attraction to me all night and vice versa, he puts his arm around me and goes in for a kiss. I do an awkward shrug out from under his arm and say no thanks. We both sit in silence for a moment until I change the subject and we resume watching a video. A few minutes later he tries it again. I do the shrug again to get away from him. This time, his response is to do this big, exaggerated cartoonish yawn stretch and announce that he's going to take a nap on my floor for a bit before he drives all the way back home. He then proceeds to lay down, close his eyes, and not respond when I talk to him. If this happened now, there is no way I would do what I did then. Actually, if it was now, I wouldn't have done most of the things that led up to this. Remember, young and dumb. I turn off the lights and leave him in my room to go hang out with my roommate in the kitchen. A few minutes later I got a text from this guy that made my stomach drop. It said, "Sorry I took your keys, I'm going to leave them in the center console of your car." Now, I lived in a granny unit unattached from the main house that sat in the backyard. It was for this reason that I did not see him slip out of my room. I run back out and the lights are off and dude is gone. Sure enough, so are my keys. I go out and check the center console. No keys. I call and text this guy over and over to no response. I don't know what he's trying to pull, but I know where his truck is parked, so I run down to it. The truck is still there, but he's nowhere in sight. He still isn't answering my calls. So, I start pacing around his truck, my logic being that he's not going to get away with stealing my keys. At this point, I'm completely freaked out thinking he lured me out of my house and he's probably robbing me blind. I don't dare leave the truck though, in case he tries to make a getaway. After about 45 minutes of pacing and calling him over and over, his phone starts going straight to voicemail and he still hasn't appeared. Again, the truck is about a 5-minute walk from my place, so where he has been all this time is a mystery. Eventually, a police car drives by. They circle the block and pull in, curious why I'm pacing around an abandoned parking lot at midnight. I tell the cops the whole story, the weird date, the disappearance, the keys, the center console, everything. The cops are just as weirded out as I am. I ask them if they wouldn't mind going to check my center console again for the keys, because I don't want to leave the truck while he still has them. They oblige and come back a few minutes later to tell me that my keys are in fact in my car. I asked them if they wouldn't mind giving me a ride home because I'm kinda terrified of this guy now. They kindly let me hop in the back seat. Once I got home and got my keys out of the car, I gave them a statement and description and they said they'd be on the lookout for the dude. I go into my room and nothing is out of place, nothing is missing or disturbed. I drove by where his truck was parked the next morning and it was gone. He deleted his dating profile and blocked me on FB. To this day there is so much I'd like to know about that night. Why did he take my keys in the first place? If he was planning on robbing me, why did he tip me off that he took them? Why didn't he steal anything if that was his intention? Most of all, where was he hiding all that time? I'll probably never find out. He did send me a creepy message on Facebook years later with a half-assed apology and tried to explain that the reason he left was because he misunderstood something I said, but his excuse was weak and didn't add up and he refused to answer when I asked why he took my keys and where he was hiding. Then, he blocked me again. Needless to say, I was incredibly foolish and also incredibly lucky that nothing worse happened. I used online dating here and there again afterward but was always much more careful about my interactions. Edit, I really appreciate the hypotheses about what happened, please keep sending them my way. This has been a personal enigma for me for about a decade and no matter how I mull it over in my head or discuss it with friends, I can't for the life of me figure out what happened. Only he knows, and since he was so obstinate about answering my questions, we can only speculate. Story 28. The guy played Dance Dance Revolution for a good 45 minutes while I just stood there. I left and played a couple arcade games by myself, then came back and he was still playing. On the car ride home, he asked how many children I wanted and started suggesting names for our kids. Then tried to make out with me when I got home. Nope, goodbye.